Good morning and welcome to our reflection for Monday the 20th of April. If you've been listening and watching the reflections over the last few weeks, you'll have noticed that in the week leading up to Easter, Holy Week, the readings were all about Jesus' last few days on earth. And then last week, Easter week, they were all about the post-resurrection experience. Now, for the next few weeks, we're jumping back into Jesus' life and thinking about his teaching, his life, his work. These are the readings for the daily office. They are part of the Anglican Church's what's called a lectionary, and the set readings that form part of the daily life and worship of every Anglican church. I don't make these readings up as I go along. So the reading for today, John chapter 15, starting at verse 18. Jesus said to his disciples, "If the world hates you, be aware that it hated me before it hated you. If you belonged to the world would love you as its own. Because you do not belong to the world, but I have chosen you out of the world, therefore the world hates you. Remember the word that I said to you, servants are not greater than their master. If they persecuted me, they will persecute you. If they kept my word, they will keep yours also. But they will do all these things to you on account of my name, because they do not know him who sent me." So the question that today's reading poses is this: how should a Christian respond to the culture around him or her? It's quite startling words that Jesus uses. If the world hates you, be aware that it hated me before it hated you. I don't feel that the world hates me. Am I wrong to think that way? How should a Christian feel about the world? It's been a strong struggle or conundrum that Christians have had to struggle with throughout its history. Some, like the Amish for instance in America, have taken this passage quite literally and decided to exclude themselves from the surrounding culture, setting themselves quite apart through language and actions, not having electricity, using different styles of clothing and wordings, and the whole culture is very different. Sometimes the church can go completely the other way and be virtually indistinguishable from the surrounding culture, and even collude in the wrongs that are committed. For instance, the churches in England and America were part of the structure that enabled slavery to continue and thrive for centuries. And in the Second World War, many parts of the German church turned a blind eye, at least, and if not more, to the evils of Nazism. And sometimes the Anglican Church gets it wrong too. The criticism that the Anglican Church is the Tory party at prayer is only partly wrong. Now, I'm not saying I have anything wrong with the Tory party, but it says something about how Christianity can be viewed if it's just part of the culture, if it has nothing to say to the culture, no way of critiquing the culture. So my reflection on the passage is this: if we take it too literally, we're in danger of rejecting what is good in the world and the culture around us. But if we pass it off as not important, then we lose the ability to stand out against injustice and wrongs. Instead, when I read this passage, I find myself steering a middle course that seeks to celebrate what is good in our culture. Things like clapping on Thursdays, working together as communities to help the less able, things that each of the churches are doing in terms of Thorner Cares, Your Skulls or Barrack Cares. Things like Captain Tom Moore and his heroic walks. Frontline NHS staff working all hours to beat COVID-19. These are things worth celebrating about the world we now live in, and we as Christians, we as the church, should be celebrating along with them, being part of the world as it is, those good things. But as Christians, and some perhaps also rather whether we're Christians or not, there are times when we need to stand up and speak truth to power, when that power is exerting a dishonest or an unjust force on those in need. Governments and people in power are not always right, and sometimes they need reminding of that fact. Now, I'm not going to get party political here, but you just have to read the news to realise that sometimes governments need to be held account. But so does everybody. We each need to stand up for what is right, stand against what is wrong. Then, when we stand for good. And that is what Christ calls us all to do. Amen.